My guest today is Julie Kennington. Now, held various roles at Flexline since the company was founded, but prior to joining the company, she was a founder and CEO at Drenched Fitness, a workout studio that combined cardio and strength training using high intensity interval training, which is, of course, the HIT method, and had a fit food store, which I'm going to ask her about. Prior to Drenched, she held sales roles at Myriad Genetics and Pfizer over a 14-year period and holds a BS in exercise you from Arizona State University. In fact, I was just with a former professor from ASU. So welcome, Julie. You've got quite a wonderful background that I'm going to ask you about. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Now, I saw I'm going to call it an apparatus because I don't know what else to call it at this point. I saw Flexline, and this was at the Idea Fitness Convention, and I thought to myself, I wonder if that's something I could use. I wonder if that's something that's just used in gyms and studios. But first of all, I'm going to ask you why you left having a wonderful studio that you said was cardio and strength training, to do this.
Well, that's a big question that could take pretty much the whole time answering, but I will try to make it pretty short and to the point. So I opened Drenched probably 6 years ago after being laid off from Pfizer, a large pharmaceutical company, and at the time I was 5 months pregnant. And so it left me wondering what was next for me. So we opened up Drenched, my husband and I did. And about 3 years into Drenched, my husband being a mechanical engineer, he saw a great opportunity because strength training in groups is very challenging to perform effectively and safely and get the results that you want. And so being the mechanical engineer that he is, he developed Flexline, basically, in a nutshell. And we had a big opportunity with Flexline, but we also had to make some decisions as to what we wanted to focus our time on. At one point, we had attempted to grow Drenched to be more than just one studio, growing either just as a corporation or growing as a franchise. And we decided that where we were in our lives, having 2 young children, that this would be an endeavor that was more than we wanted to more work than we wanted to put in, potentially with a lot of travel and so forth. So we basically saw the opportunity with Flexline to create a product as opposed to a brick and mortar business. Because when you have a brick and mortar business, it's just a different type of work. It's not that we weren't up for the challenge of the work. It was just such a different type of work that we saw the opportunity to create a product-driven business to be more appealing to the two of us. And so when we decided that, yes, we wanted to explore the opportunity of Flexline, we also knew that we'd have to give things up in the process. And we decided that it was now time, 5 years after developing Drenched, to kind of let that go. I still teach there. It's a great opportunity for me to still teach there and work with the people that I've grown to become very close with. But Flexline is now where we're devoting our professional efforts.
So how is Flexline? I mean, I saw it, but I'm trying to get our listeners to visualize this. How is it different from other fitness equipment?
Okay, so that's an interesting question because every time I try to explain it, it's like you have a very different visual, and then when you see it, there's just this aha moment. So if for your viewers can see in their mind's eye a cable crossover machine, and say the cable crossover machine that they're probably familiar with has a stack of weights on each side of it, right? So you have a cable or a handle on the right and a handle on the left. And the handle on the right is normally controlled by the weight stack right underneath it. And same thing with the left. So basically what we have done with Flexline is we've taken out the big bulky weights. And where for the most part, most people walking up to a cable crossover machine, they're not going to really get or understand what the weight they can lift on a variety of different exercises the first time. right? They might do just, for example, the chest press, which is a very familiar exercise to use with a cable machine. And they're going to guess, well, let's do 2 plates on each side. And then they get to it, and it's either too heavy or it's too light. What Flexline has done is actually taken out all the weights and added air. And that's not necessarily new either. There are other companies that work with pneumatics, that work with air. But what Flexline has done differently is they have added Bluetooth-enabled handles to add and subtract resistance right there on the fly, on demand. So if I grab the right handle with the positive button at my right thumb, and I grab the left handle with the negative button at my left thumb, now I can execute a move, any move you want, with very little resistance, and with the touch of a button, I can add resistance slowly or I can add resistance quickly. So for the novice person working out, you don't need to know how much weight you can lift. You just start to add weight slowly, and as you start to get used to it, you might add a little more weight to it and get to the right amount of resistance. For somebody that is very well versed and very advanced in weightlifting, what this opens the door for them to do is go to failure. And by that, I mean going and adding enough resistance where you can barely get out that last rep. Now, a lot of other equipment can do that if you have a spotter as well. But what this allows you to do is go to failure and then take a little resistance off and do another repetition. Take a little resistance off, do another repetition. And we're coining that term to be staying in the failure zone.
So really that's, it's very scientific. So can you use this only for group exercise, or can it be done individually?
Nope, you can do it individually as well. So you can do it alone. You can do it with a personal trainer. You can use one station and have 2 people superset or, just work out together. There's all kinds of different ways that Flexline can be used.
And where can people find this equipment?
So right now we are making way, trying to get Flexline into clubs all over the country. Drenched Fitness, the studio that my husband and I owned, it's of course there. There's a place in Houston called Sculpt. It's there. In Tennessee, it's called Vive for Women. We are going to be in Cornerstone Clubs in Pennsylvania in November. And there's a handful of other clubs that have it as well. So we've got a small base right now, but I'm hopeful that if we were to talk in 6 to 12 months, that we would be all over the country.
Wow. So you exhibited this at the Idea World Convention. How did that work for you?
It was a great showcase for us. It did a couple things for us. We're a young company, almost 2 years old, and it did a couple things. Number one, proof of concept. The number of people that came up and were impressed with it, wanted more information, wanted to potentially put one, two. We even have somebody we're working with right now up in San Francisco that wants 12 potentially. It just proved that what we thought was going to be interesting in this market actually is. And then we just developed a ton of contacts with Flexline, either partners or just people that we would do business with.
Wow.
So we look at it as a great success.
So now let's talk about the business side of it. How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I would love to take credit for the idea. Unfortunately, I can't take credit for it. My husband is actually the one who invented Flexline, and it's been probably 3.5 years in the making. And he's got a very three-dimensional mind and can really see things before they're even, in reality. And so I can remember 3 years ago when he kept telling me about what he wanted to do, I kept saying, just build it. I have to see it. I can't see it in my mind's eye the way you can. And so he went through 2 or 3 iterations of it until we came up with the product that you see today. So I think that he and I make a great team, and he can, I'm more programming and sales, and he's more development. So I can't really take credit for inventing it. It's all him.
But isn't that a nice combination? People don't understand whether it's husband and wife or whether it's two males or two females or just a female and male, that you each, when you do something together, you must have different skills. And,
Absolutely.
although we like people like ourselves, because we're all so wonderful, but it's a mistake, because what happens is you both do the same things well and you don't do the other half, then you have to
Right.
have that done. But what is it like working with your husband? In other words, do you talk shop day and night? I mean, you've got two kids. Um,
Yeah.
do you go home and say, okay, this is the end of it, which I know is almost impossible? Well, how do you divide that up?
Well, we've never developed any hard fast rules as to, okay, when we hit the threshold at home, the work talk goes off. We've never really done that. And unfortunately, my kids, they're 6 and 8 now. When it was Drenched that we owned, they would always say, "Can you talk about anything besides Drenched?" And now the verbiage is, "Can you talk about anything besides Flexline?" So it is hard to work together and not talk about work all the time. It's either kids or work, kids or work. But starting from back when we worked with Drenched, he and I, as you said, have two very different skill sets. And I think that one thing that worked in our favor was that we each respected what the other one brought to the table. And I was never going to be the one to tell him how to do his side of the business. And he never tried to tell me how to do my side of the business. So if you have a partner that has a different skill set, I think it's very important that you each respect what the other one brings to the table. And I think we did that very well. And I think that it's continuing along that same line with Flexline. I have to
That's
say the benefit that we have with Flexline is that we did get an investor. And when we got an investor, we got several other employees, one of which is a CEO. And the CEO is actually both of our bosses. So neither Brandon or I are alone in this anymore, and we don't take direction from each other. We take direction from someone else. And I think that is definitely going to, number one, help us move faster, and then help keep Brandon and I just kind of together.
Well, that brings up another point, Julie. You have this CEO now, which I agree, entrepreneurs make terrible runners of businesses. I mean, they get to a point and then they just can't seem to get any further. So
Hmm.
it does take like a professional manager to do that. What's it like when it was both of your dreams to do this? And then you've got someone telling you what to do. And I'm sure there are times you don't agree. I mean, there are those instances. What happens then? How do you feel?
Oh gosh, John McCauley, who is the CEO now, he is very what's the word I'm looking for? He very much takes into consideration that this is, Brandon's baby, and though he makes the right decisions for the company, his whole goal is to see Flexline succeed, and we're all on the same page with that. That any decision that he makes is for the betterment of the company, and as long as we all agree with that, right now it's all working out really well. That every decision that is made is to help Flexline succeed.
That's great. That is absolutely great. So, exactly what are your responsibilities? What do you do at the company?
So right now, my title is Director of Customer Relations and Programming, and that's probably going to change quickly as we start to grow and expand, because I've either got to make the decision of, do I want to be in sales or do I want to do programming for clubs. So very similar to the way TRX or even spinning does. They have people that develop programming so that when you put this in a club and you give them 6 units, if you just give it to them and you leave it to their own devices to develop the curriculum, things can go really well, but things can go really wrong. And so we need to start to develop curriculum, and we need to start to develop programming so that when a gym does buy 6, we would come in and train their trainers that this is how you would conduct this class. This is the terminology you would use for this class. So I'm not sure which direction I'm going to go. Right now I'm wearing 2 hats. because we're small enough to do that. But eventually, I'm going